Welcome to 5 Star CX, the podcast where customer-centric leadership comes to life. I'm your host, Billy, and today our guest is Brooke B. Sellas. Brooke is the founder and CEO of B Squared Media and author of Conversations That Connect: How to Connect, Converse, and Convert Through Social Media Listening and Social-Led Customer Care. Brooke is truly a master of her craft. In our conversation, we discussed everything from the pivotal role conversations play in building authentic relationships with customers, insights on harnessing customer data for hyper personalization, and the future of social media for customer service. If your brand is looking to elevate your customer experience, then you are in luck because this episode is packed with actionable strategies. So, without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Brooke. All right, Brooke, you've had an exciting journey from aspiring weather girl to becoming a leader in the social media CX space. Can you share a little bit about your background and ultimately what led you to start your business at B Squared Media?
Yeah, I talk about this a lot in the book, but a very long time ago, like another lifetime ago, I used to work in nonprofit. And when I first got to the foundation, they said to me, we're realizing that all of our donors are much older and we need to get younger people involved with the charity sooner rather than later so that we can cultivate them as they grow into older donors. So I got a group of young professionals together who I knew in Dallas at the time, and we decided that the most attractive way to get people, young professionals involved, would be beer. And so we decided to do a pub crawl, but the way in which we got the message out was very different in that we used Facebook. And this was back in like 2006, 2007. So Facebook pages didn't exist yet, Facebook ads didn't exist yet, but we used a Facebook profile, much like you would use a Facebook page today. And we just started having conversations about this pub crawl that we were going to have benefiting cystic fibrosis. And lo and behold, very long story short, like 3 months in, we had 7,500 people sign up. We executed a pretty flawless event and we ended up making about $60,000, which is 16 times more than most first time events made for the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. So, like, immediately I was like, wow, there's a there with social media.
Yeah, it just kind of seems like that was just kind of the logical choice. Did you then start B Squared, or was B Squared already started from that?
I had that little seed planted, but I actually didn't start B Squared until a few years later. I had gone back to school and I actually did my undergraduate research study on social media and the social penetration theory. Terrible name, brilliant concept. But essentially, I wanted to find out, like, why did that happen the way it happened? And I looked at several other nonprofits to do like a comparative study. And what I found was that the nonprofits, and this is true for brands today, that focused on conversations and not campaigns, so like cultivating relationships versus selling on social media, tend to have bigger following, more active followers, like they engage in the conversation with the brand, and they tend to have a greater return on investment through their followers on social media.
I mean, that makes so much sense, and that actually kind of brings me to your business. B Squared Media is a company of award-winning experts in outsourced social media marketing and social care. We did a few months back. We did an article interview with you. Thank you so much for participating. And in that article, you talked about your care method. We're going to put the article in the show notes so our listeners can go read that. But I'd love to learn a little bit about your company's overall mission, and then let's dive deeper into how you strategically use your care method with your clients.
Yeah, so I started B Squared Media in 2012. So we've been around for a while. We're a dinosaur in this social media marketing world. And my vision always has been, as our tagline says, think conversation, not campaign, because of what happened at the charity that I worked for and then what I found in my undergraduate research. Conversations are the most important part. Engagement is the most important metric in social media. And yet, all these years later, companies are still using it as a broadcast platform. It's all about sharing information about their products, how to buy their products, etc. When in reality, what we've seen with our clients, and then obviously many well-known brands that a lot of people would recognize and know, is that the ones who have that personality and those conversations, and they're not always trying to be transactional with their messaging on social media, do far better than those who are just trying to sell through social media.
You mentioned in the article I wanted to ask you about, without naming names, one of your clients, a billion-dollar consumer tech brand, you increased their social media response time by over 3,000%. That's incredible. Can you just give us some insights on that process, some of the strategies you put together for this business?
Yeah. So when we first started working with this company, and by the way, this happens all the time. So I don't want people to think this is an outlier situation. This is what we hear from big and small brands alike. But social media lives 24/7, and the crises always tend to happen Friday just after customer support's left, or on the weekends, or on a holiday, right? So when we started working with this company, what we found was they were only responding to all of the messages that they got Monday through Friday, because that's inherently when their employees were on or were working. By the time they got into the office on Monday and they were trying to catch up with what happened on the weekend, it just became a thing where there was only enough time to address the negative or the complaints that were happening on social. And that's a great strategy if you have limited resources, but you also want to engage in those positive conversations because, again, social media is a spectator sport. Everybody's watching, and more people are using it to decide if they want to do business with your brand, right? So we started taking over not only the negative comments, but the positive comments as well. And we worked for them 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So we took their response time from, I believe they were just over 22 hours to respond to under 30 minutes to respond. And obviously, the results in being able to be much faster and answer all kinds of inquiries that came through were very important to the brand, led to a more engaged following, but also more social media selling, which is what most brands want in the first place.
Yeah, it seems like you kind of have to create this type of connection with your customer before you can sell them, because nobody likes to be sold to. And this actually leads us to I've got a handful of trending topics that I want to get your perspective on. The first one is the buyer's journey. For me in particular, I find the buyer's journey so fascinating today because we live in a self-paced buyer's journey. And
Mm-hmm.
the buyer's journey is so individualized per company that you can't plug and play. It's not a one size fits all. It's so personalized. And so it makes it really exciting. How do you think brands should adapt their digital touchpoint strategy? And maybe you can share some strategies that you found effective in creating a journey map that is so good that it creates loyal brand advocates.
Yeah. So this leads right into the care method that you mentioned earlier, which is a method that we came up with after serving our social care clients for over 6 years. And essentially it's conversations, acquisition, retention, and engagement. And ultimately what we're doing is we're looking at the channel of choice. And I think as brands, we've forgotten sometimes that not everybody is going to use email or the phone. More and more consumers, especially the younger generations, are using social media to buy, to research brands, to look at these brand conversations that are happening, reviews. So if you focus on what we call channel of choice, which is meeting customers where they are, not where you want them to be, and personalizing what's happening on that channel of choice. One of the first things I always tell brands to do is to perform an audit. Go through all of your social media channels and look at where most of the conversations are happening. That's that C, that first thing right there in the beginning of care. Because if you're having a ton of conversation on, say, Facebook, but zero conversation on LinkedIn, I would not spend my time and money and energy on LinkedIn. I would put it onto Facebook. And then when you're going through and you're looking at the acquisition and retention, all that means is as we're filtering through those conversations, what we're looking for are indicators that say, this is an acquisition conversation, meaning this is a sales question, right? Do you have this in my size? Do you ship here? What does shipping cost? Are there any deals right now on this pair of shoes, right? That's an acquisition question. You should tag it as such. Or is it a retention question? Somebody is coming in with a complaint or a troubleshooting issue that they need with the product they've already purchased, right? They're already a customer. That would be the R, retention, and tag it as such. And then once you know where most of these conversations are happening and you're able to quantify, okay, this many are related to sales and this many are related to customer support, you've already quantified and given your C-suite a reason to invest more time, money, and energy on that channel of choice. And it's all based on what the customer is telling you and not on our gut, which unfortunately a lot of marketers like to operate off of gut, and that just doesn't work.
I love that perspective. It really takes the kind of data-driven approach into, I think, what is needed in today to understand where your buyer's journey, how your buyer's journey acts. Along the lines with the buyer's journey, you discussed in a previous article that you've written about the importance of authenticity in social media engagement. What advice do you have for companies who might be struggling to build that genuine connection with their customer?
I mean, authenticity in social media is a non-negotiable. And if you can't be an authentic, vulnerable brand, because being authentic means being vulnerable, right? Fessing up when you mess up, then you should not be using social media as a channel. So I'm not a social media gal who will sit here and be like, everybody needs to be on social, because if you can't be authentic, which includes being vulnerable, I don't think social media is going to work for you. And if you're struggling to build genuine conversations with your audience, which then lead to genuine connections, my advice is to start by listening to your customers, right? Do that audit that I just talked about, see what your customers are saying. And if they're not talking about your brand, a lot of brands will say, oh, well, nobody's talking about me. That's problem number one. People should be talking about you. And I'd add to that, they probably are talking about you. You just don't know it. So using social listening to find instances where people are mentioning your stakeholders, your products, or your services, right? Because a lot of times when we go out onto social and we talk about certain brands, we're not tagging Nike when we're talking about a shoe, right? How much we love it or how much we hate it. We're probably talking about the specific brand name. So people probably are talking about you, but you would not get that notification if they were mentioning the shoe, the type of shoe, and not at tagging Nike, right? So social media is not just a megaphone for your marketing messages, it's a two-way street. So if you pay attention to what your audience is saying, specifically about your brand, the industry as a whole, and your competitors, you'll much more easily know how to communicate with them and start having those conversations that connect.
I want to switch gears and talk about how customer service and social media can help business reach their revenue targets. I think many companies still see their overall customer experience as a cost center rather than a revenue generator. How do you suggest companies should shift their mindset so they can leverage social media, customer service as a strategic asset rather than a bottom line expense?
Yeah, this perception is definitely a hurdle, and it's such a persistent misconception. So that's my biggest thing that I'm trying to advocate for right now, is changing and shifting that mindset of the C-suite to understand that customer service, especially through social media, is not a cost center. One of the most important, I mean, I would say do your research, right? That's the most important thing I would say. If you look at all of the research that's out there, McKinsey just came out with a recent report that said customers spend anywhere from 20 to 40% more with companies that respond to customer service requests on social media. So, like, it's McKinsey. We know it's a trusted brand. It's a huge report that they have to get, but those are huge numbers, 20 to 40% more, just for going and using social media the way it was supposed to be used in the first place by responding to people. So, social is where your customers are spending time, especially if you do market to younger customers. And this is where they go to make those purchase decisions. This is where they go to seek that support, whether it's acquisition or retention. And this is where they're talking to each other about those products, services, stakeholders, whatever it may be. So when you provide exceptional service on social media platforms, you're not just resolving issues. A lot of people think it's all retention based. You're creating moments of delight that help people want to buy from you and that build that loyalty and that advocacy that so many brands are saying that they're looking for but aren't able to attain.
Yeah, I can see how that mindset shift can be a constant challenge. I'm curious to get your kind of overarching thoughts. What are some of the biggest overall challenges companies are facing today in providing exceptional social media customer service, and how can they overcome these obstacles?
I mean, I think I mentioned it earlier in the example with the big tech company, but what I hear time and time again when I'm talking, I'm the salesperson for B Squared. I am the sales team. So the thing that I hear the most is just the sheer volume and speed of interactions that are happening. We know through more research, through big brands, that customers expect a really quick response on social media. So they don't care if your employees work only Monday through Friday from 9 to 5. If they message you on a Saturday, really within 1 hour, they expect a response to that message. So this is weighing heavily on brands from the conversations that I've been having. And they're failing to meet those expectations, right? It's hard to meet those expectations because there's an inherent mismatch between when employees work, which is traditionally Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and when social media lives, which is 24/7, right? So to overcome this, number one complaint that I hear is just to prioritize real time or as real time as possible monitoring. Have a dedicated team that's ready to engage quickly and effectively Monday through Friday when your team is on. And ideally, have somebody work through the weekend. If you can't, you could obviously partner with a company like B Squared, but you could also set up chatbots. Chatbots are great for answering frequently asked questions. So it can say something like, "Our humans are sleeping right now. This is the Brooke bot." And, they'll get back to you by such and such time tomorrow, and only say it if you can meet that expectation, right? And then frequently asked questions could be answered by the bot. Now, if it's a more complex question, they're going to want a human. As all of the research has shown, brands are in a hurry to use AI, but people are not. The customers are not. So be very careful and make sure that if they do run into that complex question with your bot, that the bot can say, "Listen, I can't help you with that, but I'm going to send an email to so-and-so and they'll get back to you tomorrow by X." And then make sure that you meet or beat that time.
I love the transparency of the Brook bot saying, "Hey, I'm sorry, our humans are sleeping right now, but I'll take care of you as much as I can." It kind of shows that we're really moving away from kind of the old days of corporate speak, and we're being humans to other humans. And I hope our listeners take that and go, "Hi, I'm Brook bot. Our humans are sleeping." I think that's great.
You don't have to
Um,
name it Brooke, but you know what I mean? Like, I
yeah,
just
yeah,
think
the
you're,
person X bot.
yeah. You nailed it on the head though. Like, be transparent, be vulnerable with your bots as well. Don't try to hide the fact that it's a bot, but try to put some humor into it. Like, "Hey, our humans have to sleep. We don't, but they're sleeping." Whatever that looks like, it just makes it more fun and human if you can inject that personality even into.
Yeah, I've noticed over the past couple years that personality and the entertainment value or infotaining, if you will, really goes a
Yes.
long way to differentiate yourself as a brand. Brooke, I've got two more questions for you. I greatly appreciate your time. The first question is about customer data. So, customer data analytics obviously play more and more of a critical role in shaping a brand's overall CX strategy. What
Yeah.
best practices do you typically recommend for leveraging this data to improve social care? and how can companies ensure that they maintain a high quality of data for their customer?
I love this question so much because social media is the perfect place for what we call voice of customer data or customer data. I'll give you an example. When I was doing the research for my book, this is an example I use in the book. I was looking at brand Pro Flowers. They do, flower delivery. You can go online and get a bouquet of flowers sent to your mom for Mother's Day, for instance. And one of the questions they asked their audience on their Facebook page, or they didn't even really ask, they kind of asked without asking, but it said, unpopular opinion, carnations are gorgeous. And then they put the hashtag unpopular opinion. And all kinds of people weighed in with their opinions. I love carnations. I hate carnations. Carnations are the worst. Oh my gosh, carnations are underrated. Now, this is what we call voice of customer data. They put their unpopular opinion on there, right? As a conversation cue, and they got opinions from their potential customers. If I was Pro Flowers and I put that out there and I saw that 80% of the people who responded said they loved carnations, what would I do as a smart marketing and salesperson using social care? I would run a promo on carnations for social media people only, because you're taking this voice of customer data that you've had through this conversation, you're collecting it, and then you're making it actionable by giving the people what they tell you they want. So if 80% of the people love carnations and I come back 2 weeks later and I say, hey, all you carnation lovers, we heard that you loved carnations, so guess what, for a limited time only and only for you, we're not running this promo anywhere else, we're going to give you a buy one get one on carnations. Now imagine the amount of people who would probably use that promo code to buy. And guess what you're doing? You're using voice of customer data. You're collecting it, first of all. Then you're putting it into action. But then as you run that promo, because you've run it on social only, you can show your stakeholders this many people, this revenue is directly attributed to social media and our social care efforts. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And it's a good reminder that at the end of the day, the businesses that we're building is fundamentally built to serve people's wants and needs. And so if people want more carnations, give them carnations. So
Give it to
I
them.
give it to them at a
Yeah.
discount.
And then and then as far as high quality data, regularly auditing and fostering this community of communication is really important, right? So not just gathering the information. I feel like as marketers, we're really good at gathering information, but we're not really good at doing something with it. But if you see a clear data set that tells you that carnations are beloved, but they're the most amazing flower according to your audience, do something about it. And then once you're able to quantify that data, once you run that promo and it works like gangbusters, or maybe it flops, you are able to then see, like, okay, even though they said they loved carnations, they weren't willing to buy. I wonder why. If it were me, I would go back and ask, like, hey, y'all said you loved carnations. We put this promo out, but it didn't do very well. What did we do wrong? Let them tell you. Like, this is why it's so important to be vulnerable, because if you just ask, people will give you the information that you're seeking.
Yeah, that's that C in care is conversation, is have that continue
Yes.
back and forth conversation.
And it
All right,
leads
Brooke,
back to E, which is engagement, right? As long as we're having those conversations over and over again and people are engaging, we can lead right back up to C. It should be like a flywheel. It kind of self-propels as long as you're doing it correctly.
I love that. My last question for you is one that I feel terrible to ask. I think I'm going to ask you a predictions question, and I think we're
Oh
living
boy.
in days where giving a prediction is a little bit of a fool's errand. But I'm going to put you on the hot seat. As social media continues to evolve, where do you see its role in customer service, let's say over the next 5 years? Maybe you can share some trends and innovations that that companies should focus on to stay ahead of the curve, because I think staying ahead of that curve is getting harder and harder to do, and you have to be more agile, there's more iterations, it's all moving so fast.
Yeah.
Where are you seeing the landscape going in the next 3 to 5 years?
For me, staying ahead means embracing the technologies that we're seeing come out now. So social media, I think, will become the primary customer service channel once some of the younger generations come into full buying power. And I think a lot of that will be driven by advancements in AI and automation on the brand side. So if you are focusing on integrating AI powered chatbots for quick responses, but also having the humans there for complex issues and collecting all of that data both from the AI and from the humans, you'll be able to better personalize your messages, or what we call hyper personalization, where we're not just personalizing based on what one segment of people liked, but the ProFlowers example that I gave, that's hyper personalization, even though it's not one to one. But you could also give one to one personalization once you start building those databases of your customers, knowing their channel of choice, knowing their preferences, all of those things. So I think really using social to have conversations, understanding that it will become one of the main or the primary customer service channel in the future, and then embracing and learning now the technology that's coming out around collecting that voice of customer data and making replying all the time quickly much more easier for brands to do.
Brooke, I greatly appreciate you being on our show. Thank you so much for sharing your journey and about your business and your perspective. And we can't wait to see what you do next. So thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I'd like to thank Brooke for being an amazing guest. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next episode of 5 Star CX. Take care.